Hello everyone, it's Silvia from Fairlight Tarot. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to have a look at another VR. So the tag is My Cozy Decks, and I've seen it around on YouTube in the last couple of days, and I think the original video was from Nightshade Tarot, so I'll make sure to put the link for the video in the description box below. And when I saw it, I've seen it in a few channels, and when I saw it, I really thought that I should have taken part in that, because these last days have been, weather-wise, have been really tough for us in the community where I live. So I live by the ocean, and even though it's a wonderful place, we are reminded every now and then that it's also it can also be a very dangerous place when it comes to, you know, some extreme weather events like we've had in the last couple of days. We've been on high alert actually, for even for evacuation for 2.5 days straight, because of just the power of the wind, really. I mean, we had winds up to 68 to 70 kilometers per hour for 2.5 days. And as I was saying in my latest video, it was really scary. It was scary for us, and it was scary for even for my cats, because I felt like I had to protect them. But they were restless. They really wanted to run away from something that they didn't really know. They were hearing the noises, and they feel that there's something wrong, but they cannot identify, you know, the origin of something that scares them. So they're really frantic, and I felt like I needed to reassure them, but I myself was a bit worried. So just to give you an idea, a few years ago there's been a terrible massive king tide. So it's a very similar phenomenon to a tsunami that has literally destroyed the whole coastline. It's literally just destroyed all the buildings in the coastline. It's been eroding at least 5 or 6 meters off the main coast, and many buildings were collapsed and just destroyed, really. I mean, if you've ever seen it, it looks like the most horrible scenes of devastation I've ever seen in my life, because the ocean just comes in and takes away everything, and it leaves nothing behind. So obviously, remembering that, we were all really worried about it. And when I saw this tag on YouTube, I thought, I really need to focus on my cozy decks, you know, the decks that you want to hug and they hug you back, the decks that you use when you want to feel better because of whatever reason. So this is my choice for this tag, and let's have a look. So I'm just going to start with a pretty obvious choice, the Savvy Soul Tarot by Julie Whitelish. If you watch my channel, you've seen this deck so many times already. It's probably not a surprise that I've chosen this one to show you how cozy this deck is for me. And I have to apologize, because I said in my latest video that I was going to check with Julie whether she still has stock of the deck, and I actually forgot. So sorry about that. I'll make sure to do it this time. But in any case, it's very easy. Just if you follow her on Instagram, I think her account is the Savvy Soul Tarot, or Savvy Soul Tarot. And so it won't be difficult, and she's so sweet. She will, if you send her a message, she'll answer. She'll tell you if she does indeed have any deck left in stock or not. I really do recommend this deck, as I do every time I show this deck on camera. It's just my favorite one, simply because I relive my life going through this deck, looking at all of these cards. I feel like every single one of these cards reminds me of something, a moment that I had, a joyful moment, a sad moment, a boring moment, you know, a difficult time that I went through. But every single one of them has a special meaning for me. It resonates so much that you know, it's cozy. That's the reason why it's cozy for me, because I know this deck But you know, you can know a lot of decks, especially when you use them a lot. What makes them cozy, at least to me, is the way the deck knows me. So it's not just the bond that I managed to create during the times that I've been using this deck with the deck itself, but it's the way in which the deck has actually responded back to me. And I really appreciate that, because not every deck has got that same kind of vibe, that same kind of response, at least for me. And to be honest with you, I've actually noticed that there's a lot of people that say exactly the same thing. So there are decks that you may use time and time again, but even though you really know them down to the smallest details, they don't have the same way to respond back to you. And I think that's what makes this deck very unique and very cozy to me, because it's a conversation that it's bilateral. So I actually talk to this deck and it talks back, and sometimes we argue and sometimes, but most of the time we're really, really good friends. So this is by far one of the most coziest, and do you actually say that? Most coziest? Probably not, which this is one of my coziest decks. The second deck I want to show you is probably also not a surprise, because I do show this deck quite a lot in my channel, and it's the Healing Waves Tarot. Now this deck is such a really beautiful deck. For one, I actually really enjoy the artwork. So it's made with fantastic skills, and it's a watercolor deck. And one thing that I really thought whenever I was reading the description and deciding whether to acquire this deck or not, I was reading about the fact that the author, the creator, used salt water from the ocean in order to dilute the colors for the watercolor. And I really felt like that was probably the main reason why I finally decided to get it, because obviously when you're deciding whether you want to get a deck or not, there's a few things that you look at. Maybe you look at the card, a very specific card. In my case, I always look at the death card, because to me it really needs to show transformation. It really needs to show that yes, you've completed a stage, but there's definitely that sense of rebirth that takes you to a next stage. Otherwise, to me, that's a no-no, unless there's the majority of the other cards I really fall in love with. And in that case, I would close an eye to the death card when I don't like it. But most of the time, it needs to be something that resonates with me. Perhaps there's a court card that really jives with you. Perhaps there's, I don't know. In many cases, I've seen people complain about the Three of Swords. They don't necessarily like the traditional depiction with the heart pierced by 3 swords. I completely second and agree with that. To me, the suit of swords is a suit of a mind, so it needs to show the numerological meaning of the 3 that comes after the union of the 2, and so it's the growth, and the suit of the mind is the growth in thoughts. And it can be negative in the sense that it can also be seen as worrying, overwhelm sometimes, etc. But if all things considered, I do look at the 3 of Swords as well. And this deck, when I saw the High Priestess, I did like all of the other cards as well, but when I saw the High Priestess, I was like, this is my deck. And this is cozy for me because I live, as I said at the beginning, I live close to the ocean. It's literally a couple of blocks away from me, and I see the ocean. I walk with my bare feet in the ocean. Well, obviously not when it's freezing, but I do my best to be in touch, physically in touch with the ocean every time I can, because there's no two ways around it. I have actually noticed, with proof in hand, that it actually has a very powerful healing property. I don't know if you've seen around those t-shirts that say vitamin C, as in SEA, or seawater cures everything. I agree. It's not just a gimmick, it's not just marketing. It is very powerful, and at least to me, I mean, I'm a water person. We all are. we're supposed to be, we're mostly made of water. There's no two ways around that. We have to recognize that. It is a very powerful element that we have in our bodies, and therefore something that is reminding me of that and putting me in touch with that part of myself that recognizes the element of water as something that I have within myself. It's very important. And you know, this deck does exactly that. Now I know that the same author has been they made another deck, I think it's called the Wild Child Tarot, and also they made an oracle deck, the Wild Child Oracle, and they're sold by Tabata, and I'm really hesitating in it, and it's not even that bad of a pricing range. I mean, considering that the Healing Waves, even before it went out of print, you know, it was selling for like $200. I think that the Wild Child sells for around $100 Australian, so it's actually, you know, not too bad. But I'm really hesitating, so I would really love to hear what you think. So if you have the Healing Waves, do you also have the Wild Child? That would be really interesting to me to know, because you know, do you think it's worth it? I guess I'd like to hear what you have to say about that. So please let me know in the comments below. I always really love it when you guys interact with me, because it makes me feel like I'm not just here showing you the cards. So interacting is something that I really appreciate. So this was the Healing Waves Tarot. So another deck that I wanted to show you today when it comes to something cozy is the Way Home Tarot. Now, for those of you who know me, you'll know that I was born in Italy, and the fact that I still do not know what I actually call home. I don't know if it makes sense, but I'm guessing because, you know, we live in a time in which it's very easy to actually move, right? It's not just for tourism and holidays, but I actually mean by moving as in moving from one country to another. And there might be many reasons, push and pull factors, that determine whether a person wants to have a better life, and they try and seek for this better life overseas. And that was my story, basically. So I live in 5 different countries. Always seeking for something better. I guess I'm a bit of a restless soul. But lately, I have realized that even though I do have friends all over the world, the ones that count the most for me are actually back in Italy. So even though I do not call Italy home anymore, because I haven't lived in Italy for many years, I reckon it's about 28 years that I don't live there. It's a long time. It's the majority of my life, really. But I do feel like, you know, home should be where you have someone that really recognizes you. You know what I mean? That knows you. Home is where there's people that know you. You know them and they know you back. And so to me, it's something that reminds me of home, not necessarily because this deck will remind me of Italy, because it doesn't, but the fact that it does have that concept of way home, it does make me feel of, you know, think of Italy. And in that case, it does have that kind of coziness feel to it. And other than that, it's actually a really beautiful deck. I enjoy using it. I enjoy looking at it. I really enjoy pairing it. There's a couple of oracle decks that I pair. I think they go really well with this. Like, for example, the Modern Nirvana Oracle, the Connected and Free. Actually, the Connected and Free looks like it's been made for this deck, because it's very similar when it comes to, you know, color palette and artwork and stuff. What I enjoy and what I think it's cozy about this deck is that it's actually non-judgmental. And let me see if I can explain this concept, because I was thinking about it the other day, and I was thinking, what would you actually define as non-judgmental? When is a deck judgmental? A deck is judgmental when it's really confronting. Okay, when it shows you very confronting images. And don't get me wrong, confrontational, it's not wrong. It's good. There's nothing wrong about confrontational. And as a matter of fact, I do believe that you kind of need a bit of a slap in the face every now and then to get to that point of introspection, and especially when you need to do that kind of shadow work to heal some sides of yourself. Look at this star card, is amazing. So this deck doesn't have any of that. I mean, we've just seen the death card, which is a bit not confrontational, but it's a bit sad because it's an animal, right, which is dead, and it's basically a corpse of an animal. But there is that sense of rebirth in that as well, and I really love that. I really enjoy the fact that there is so much life that comes out of this deck, so much energy. It's a deck that really expresses the opportunities in life, the fact that we need to get back in touch with nature, the fact that we need to, by getting back in touch with nature, we actually get back in touch with ourselves. And I love these lanterns. I know that there's a festival in Thailand in which they actually release these lanterns in the sky, and they give a wish for each and every lantern that they release in the sky. They actually assign a wish. When I was in Taiwan many years ago, I did the same. And it was a period of time in which a dearest friend of mine had been diagnosed with late stage cancer. And so I obviously my wish was for her to live as long as she could. And it's just something that it really makes you think, doesn't it, that you assign so much power to hope. And it's something that it's very specific to humans. So animals can feel all sorts of feelings. Well, let's say not all sorts, but a limited number of feelings. And originally, hundreds of years ago, they actually thought that animals could not have feelings, but they do. It has been proven. Animals feel sad, for example, etc. They feel joyful when they're playing, but they don't feel hope. Everything is dictated by survival for them. Obviously, even the joyful playing is dictated by survival, in the sense that they need to learn a certain set of skills. Human beings in the animal kingdom, we are the only ones that actually can feel hope. And I still have to agree 100% with that, because I've had dogs in my life, I've had cats, I've had other pets, fur babies, as I call them. And I want to believe that a feeling such as hope is also part of their range of emotions. But therefore, I cannot say that I'm convinced 100%. However, I do like that idea. I like the idea that humans are the only ones in the animal kingdom that can actually feel hope. What do you think? If you have fur babies like me, do you see hope in them? Because it would be very interesting to know. But this deck, because of this particular way in which it's soothing, it's cozy, I really enjoy using it, and it's something I also really enjoy. This kind of pips. They're illustrated, but they're not illustrated in the traditional RWS way. So it's something that it's also very nice, because it demands your attention. It demands that you actually know the system before starting reading with this. It's always very nice to have a very specific reason to use one deck as opposed to another. So this is the Way Home Tarot. So the next deck that I wanted to show you is the Stranger Things Tarot deck. This is the official Stranger Things Tarot deck, because it even shows you the logo from Netflix. I don't know whether there's been other versions, to be honest with you. The reason why I specified that is the official deck from Stranger Things is because there's a lot of decks that are fandom related decks that don't necessarily that haven't been necessarily copyrighted. This one is official, and it's got a lot of scenes taken from the show. So if you're not familiar with Stranger Things, I actually urge you not to watch, not to have a look at this deck with me, because if you haven't watched it, there's a lot of spoilers. Like every single card will be a spoiler, apart from the Sutoscopes, which is just, ice creams, which is, it is a spoiler in the sense that are scenes in an ice cream parlor, but, other than that, it's not much spoiling here. So if you have watched it and you like this deck, or if you have watched it and you don't like this deck, You know, let me know why, because I actually heard a lot of different opinions about this deck. Personally, I love it. And the reason why I love it, and I put up with the fact that the pseudoscopes, the peeps in the pseudoscopes don't make much sense at all. The reason why I put up with that is that I love the show so much. It is one of those shows that I put on in the background, and I just, you know, I watch it. Sometimes I even leave it on in the background when I'm doing something else. I just need to hear the voices in the background. It just makes me feel at home. It makes me feel cozy. It's a cozy deck for me because it reminds me of the show, and therefore I'm willing to put up with a couple of things that I don't necessarily like about this deck, but everything else I actually really enjoy. I do understand the reason why, you know, they chose a certain character for a certain card. I completely understand, and I mostly agree with the choices they made. I also really like the way in which it's they gave this idea of this air of being torn on the side. There's a lot of things that I really enjoy about this deck. I actually even like the cardstock, if you believe it, because it's very easy to shuffle to me, which I can't say for many decks. It's just one of those decks. It is easy cozy, yes. Why is it cozy? Because it reminds me of the show. And the show, to me, that show, it makes me feel happy. I remember when I was watching it, I remember so many times in which, because it went on, I think, 4 seasons, and but there were a long period of times between one season and another. So I believe that actually the first season came out in 2015 or 2016, and what I remember is that I was in Panama. I was in Panama with my husband, and it was at the end of a really long trip, and we've been to all of the countries in Central America, and we had a wonderful time, but we were also exhausted, and so it was one of the last nights, and then we were supposed to fly back from Panama City, fly back to Sydney. And it might have been the last night, and I was like, I don't even feel like going out. I can't do it. I was exhausted. And so we just ordered something in. And I had my iPad, and I was like, you know what? There's Wi-Fi. Why don't we watch something from Netflix? And we could connect to the American Netflix, and so we could actually watch it. And I hadn't really paid attention to the show too much until that night, but that night we actually binge watched almost all of it, and to the point that I really was looking forward to be on the plane and just rewatch a few episodes you know, on the way back, because I love this so much. And it's these kind of things that I think that what makes a cozy deck is the memories that you associate with that particular deck. Are those memories cozy for you? Because if they are, you need to nurture them. And therefore, if it's a deck like this one, that to me, yeah, I don't necessarily use it for readings, because there's a number of things that, you know, it's not very straightforward. Even the renaming of the minors is not straightforward, but I keep it and I nurture it and I enjoy it because it reminds me. It has so many really good memories for me. So this is the Stranger Things Tarot. So the next deck is the Solara Occulto Tarot. If you don't know it yet, I'm very pleased to tell you that this deck is currently on Kickstarter. So it's not exactly, let me show you, I'll explain. Basically this deck, when it was originally printed, it came with very large borders, which I had to trim off because I literally could not deal with the cards. I felt like I wasn't even using it. I wasn't reaching out for it because they were, and I kid you not, they were like this big. And that made the cards impossible for me to even handle. And what I did then was I trimmed off the borders, and actually I started feeling like the cards were coming alive. Because imagine, I mean, if you look at this, you have an actual conversation. You are actually, you know, it feels like you're invited to read looking at the directionality of the cards. You know, there's this Six of Wands is looking ahead, and there's the facing of the two horses, and this character is like looking at the other direction. So there's a lot that you can actually talk about when you have the cards together like this in a line. It's much more conducive of a conversation when they're like this than when you have borders separating them. Because when you have borders, imagine borders like that big, you don't have that kind of, it's a matter of seeing it as an easy conversation, a flowing conversation, rather than reading the cards in a single way, which I almost never do. I almost never read card by card. I don't know whether it's a plus or a minus, but it's just the way I do. I don't read card by card. To me, it's always a conversation. It's always a story. It's almost a way in which I'm reading Lenormand. You need to read a sentence out of the cards, and that's the way I do it. Unless I obviously want to look at the archetypes of the cards, in that way it will be, you know, card by card. But the good news is that the creator is actually on Kickstarter right now. There is this deck is you know, the object of the Kickstarter. Not just that, but there is the tarot, and also the Mercury, Salt and Sulfur Oracle, which is by the same author, which goes really well with the tarot. It's got the same color palette, which is amazing. And it's called Solara Occulto Meliora. So if you want to look for it on Kickstarter, Solara Occulto Meliora, and you'll find this this deck. And I think it's about 22 cards of from the Oracle deck that will be included in the tarot. I think it's 22 because she wanted to get to 100, but I'm not entirely sure. In any case, this deck is cozy because of the artwork, because of the colors and the artwork. To me, these characters, they come to life. They're whimsical characters, but they're also, you know, look at this. You can't really identify them. You can't really put a label on them, because what are they? I mean, they're furry. They could be cats because of the ears, but they're standing up. I mean... But the way in which I interact with this deck, the way in which I can actually tell the stories around the cards, and I let it speak back to me, it's so very cozy. And I believe that this kind of muted color palette, but specifically because it's very warm, so it could be a muted color palette with blues, right? Blues and purple. But because it's of these kind of burnt oranges and browns and yellows and reds, obviously with the stark contrast between the black and white, because of this, it's actually feeling a lot more approachable, if you know what I mean. There are correspondences and responses to colors. So our brain actually is predisposed to have responses to colors, to very specific colors. For example, blue, and it has been scientifically proven, so I'm not just making it up. Blue would be seen as a color that will actually be calming and soothing, whereas the opposite, for example, red is an exciting color, and so on and so forth. So I really do believe that color palette is very, very important in a deck. There's no two ways around that. So I can't wait. I'm obviously back to the Kickstarter. I couldn't wait. So this is the Solara Occulto Tarot. I feel like the next deck is probably not a surprise if you know my channel, because the Ember and Aura Tarot Awakening Edition by Jamie Richardson, I've been displaying this deck so many times in my channel. And I always say there's always one main reason why I use it, one main reason why I show it. And it's basically because it's one of those decks that it's a gentle deck. It's a deck that doesn't shy away from telling you the truth, but it tells you the truth in such a way that it doesn't hurt you, and therefore you're probably more you're more open to hearing it, let's say. It's not one of those things that is actually confrontational. It does achieve that by using a very specific, you see the color palette is muted in this deck as well, but as opposed to the Solara Occulto, in this deck we're talking about pastel colors. And I appreciate it as well. I like this Solara Occulto and I like this deck in equal measure. They have different color palettes, obviously, but I really appreciate both of them. I was talking about this deck in my video, what was it called? The Tarot Easter eggs, because there's a lot of, there's a couple of, let's say, people that are represented in the cards that actually exist. They're not made up, but actually exist in the author's life. One of the cards is her mom, for example. One of the cards is her husband. Another card is a mentor for her. So in some cases that would actually mean for me a bit of an obstacle to bond with the deck, because I don't necessarily like to know that a specific card is a specific person. However, what happened was that I actually bonded with this deck a long time before I actually knew you know, who was what in the deck. And so that getting to know that after I actually bonded with the deck, I don't know, I feel like it's never been really a problem for me. So I really don't mind it. And there's some cards, so it's a peepish kind of decks, as you could see. But I really like the peeps as well, because they're meaningful peep, and especially because you can tell that there's an effort in these peeps. It's not just 5 cups, there's an eye which is, you know, crying because of the loss of the 5 of cups. So it's something that I do appreciate a lot. And as you can see, even this one I had to trim always for the same reason. So this is actually Jamie's mom and this is Jamie's husband. So this is the Ember and Aura Tarot Awakening Edition. But the next deck is the Herb Crafter's Tarot, and the reason why it's in this deck, so the cozy decks, is because I actually really enjoy studying the herbs. And lately, it's mostly related to essential oils. So obviously you need to start, the basic knowledge of essential oils need to come from the basic knowledge of the herbs. So you can't just jump straight to knowing what the healing powers or effects are of essential oils. You need to know where they come from, and the way to know that is to know the herbs. So this is actually very important to me as a study deck, as you can see from the book. Not that I don't necessarily use markers, not even pencils when I'm studying something, but it's been open so many times. There are pages that, you know, it just stays open when I get to that page. So this deck is amazing because of the knowledge that you gather when, you know, literally just studying all of the cards. And I really appreciate the associations between the plant, the herb, the flower, and the meaning of the card. It's something that on the one hand, it actually gives you more knowledge about the meaning of the card itself, because it might give you a different aspect about that particular card you hadn't thought about. But mostly it gives you a lot of insight on the herbs that represent the card itself. I really enjoy the artwork as well. It's the kind of photographic quality like pencil drawing that I really enjoy. She's the same author as the Gaian Tarot, which is with the same type of artwork. Very beautiful, although there's people in the Gaian Tarot whereabouts in this in the Herb Crafter's Tarot there's none. And you know what, that's also a reason why I find this deck actually cozy. You can see a hand every now and then, fine. This deck is cozy for me because of that, because it doesn't require my attention into confronting myself with other human beings. It's myself immersed in the world of nature, in the herbs, in their properties, in their healing powers. And it's a kind of conversation that it becomes cozy, because every single card gives me the possibility to understand how to get a better life, how to live a more conscious and aware life by making use of what nature is offering us, which is something that it's not always the case. And I'll be the first one to admit that, to be honest with you, I've been a city girl probably most of my life. Only recently I've actually started appreciating nature. It is what it is. It's you know, the way you live your life, the opportunities you have, the choices you make. And now I'm actually making the conscious choice to be much closer to nature, because I actually looked and I actually see myself the benefits of that. But this deck is very cozy because of that, because it really makes you feel like you're really in touch with the healing properties and the powers of nature. So this is the Parcel Tarot. So the next deck is a very recent acquisition in my collection. It's the Blue Earth Tarot by Alison Davis. This deck is just amazing. And you know, it goes to say a lot about the fact that what I was telling about the colors before. So I was saying that muted color palettes can be of different ranges, of different tones. For example, you can have a muted color palette with warm tones, but you can also have a muted color palette with cooler tones, and this is definitely it. So you only have blues and whites. So let's say shades of blue and, well, white, basically. And therefore, it would not feel like a warm deck. So I will not say that this is a cozy deck because it's a warm deck. However, I will say that this is a cozy deck because it's a very deeply touching deck. It's a very emotional kind of interaction, the one that you can have with this deck. It's a deck that really goes looking deeply into yourself. It helps you get in touch with parts of yourself that are actually kind of sad. And the reason why I say the word sad is because this deck is one of the decks that I feel like using during my sad days. You know, everyone has got sad days. You know what I'm talking about. So you might be melancholic, you might be thinking about someone who's not there anymore, you might be thinking about worries that you have in your life, you might be thinking about the future. Those sad days, I feel like I cannot have an overstimulating deck, an overwhelmingly busy deck. Like in a day like that, I would never use the Raincoast Tarot, for example. And if you know the Raincoast Tarot, you will know what I mean. It needs to be something soothing, okay? And this deck is absolutely soothing. It's a hug deck. It's a sad deck. I'm not going to try to put some frills around that because it is a deck that is actually kind of sad. But sometimes you also need to get in touch with a part of yourself and you need to embrace it. It is part of who we are. Sadness is also something that is very specific to human beings, even though it can be felt by animals as well. But it's something that in human beings brings about all sorts of reactions. Like, for example, when we're sad because we are remembering. We're sad because we are worrying about the future. So there is sadness referring to the past, there is sadness referring to the present, there is sadness referring to the future. What I do enjoy about this deck is that no matter what type of sadness you have, this deck will be there for you. It's just there beside you, it holds your hand, and it doesn't force you into some kind of toxic positivity, as in, oh, smile because everything is bright, everything is gonna be okay. Sometimes you don't need to hear that because you know that it's not true. You know that sometimes things don't necessarily go the way you want them to go. So you need a deck that is just there for you without being judgmental, without being pushy, without expecting you to bounce back, and just being there for you. And this deck will do just that. So this is the Blue Earth Tarot. So the next deck is also probably not a surprise if you watch my channel. It's the Curious Travels Tarot deck by Aura Tarot. This is also confirmed to come mass market. There's no timeline. I have no idea. I think I've heard that it was coming mass market at least a year and a half ago, but there's still nothing. And in the meantime, I've seen other indie decks becoming mass market, coming and going. So I don't know. But I am so glad that I could actually get this indie copy, because if I had to wait for the mass market to come out, it would have been a long time. So this deck is incredibly important for me. First of all, because it talks about travels, because the title is The Curious Travels, right? And travel for me is an essential part of myself. It is my core essence. It's who I am. I wasn't born in Australia. I live in Australia, but in the meantime, I've moved to 5 different countries. I always try to integrate in any country that I lived in. But not only that, I have made travel the one most important thing in my life. And you know, it's about choices. Obviously, I know that there's a lot of people that would think that that's a stupid choice, perhaps, or not relevant, or something that doesn't mean anything to them. To me, travel means integrating with different cultures, expanding my horizons, getting in touch with different people that have different perspectives in life, and that actually makes me happy. So the most important thing is to find a way in which I can actually feel happy, because when I feel happy, I'm a better person. I help others. I am kind. I am generous. I actually actively, I become a part of the community. When I'm on my own, we've been in lockdown for so long here in Sydney. During the pandemic, we've been in lockdown, strict lockdown, like literally not more than half an hour outside and by yourself, because if they found you with someone, you had to justify who you were with. For about 4.5 months. It was from June to November. And that was the worst time of my life, and I kid you not. And I've been through some stuff. But to me, the impossibility to leave the country. So not only were we in lockdown, but we were also not allowed to leave Australia. So I just want to make that clear, because there's a lot of people saying that, oh, you probably were allowed to leave but not to go back. No, we were not allowed to leave Australia. So there were no flights, but on top of everything, you couldn't just go to the airport, even with the booked ticket, paid for and everything, without a permit. You had to apply online to have an exit permit, a permit to leave the country. And let me assure you, there were more denials, more rejections than there were approvals. So it was de facto, literally people could not leave. That was the worst time of my life, not being allowed to leave. And of course I understand the reasons, and of course I understand the fact that we were in a pandemic, so obviously safety will come first before traveling. I completely agree with that. But in my case, it also means that I was not allowed to go to my father's funeral, for example, because he died of COVID, and I was not allowed to go to his funeral back in Italy. So there's a number of things that obviously are related to travel. When I talk about travel, is the possibility for people to move and to be, living the life that they're supposed to live, whether they achieve it in the country they're in, or they achieve it by having experiences overseas in different countries with different people. So it's something that obviously had a major impact in my mental health, and but it's something that really cemented that idea that I express myself in the best way when I'm traveling. And traveling for me also includes the planning time and the interactions with people afterwards, etc. So I'm not just talking about the 2 months that I'm away, it's also obviously the preparation time and afterwards as well. So this deck is cozy to me because it does remind me of my travels. It reminds me of the fact that I will be traveling, knocking on wood again soon. It reminds me of the fact that there's always something to plan. There's always something, another country to explore. There's always another people to get in touch with. And it's the joy of living in such a varied and incredibly interesting and beautiful world that, it's reminded to me every time that I use this deck. So this is the Curious Travels tarot deck. So this is the last tarot deck that I'm going to show you. I do have another deck, but it's an oracle deck. And the reason why I kept this one for last is because I do understand that it might be a bit of a controversy. Like, it's not necessarily a deck that people in the tarot community have accepted, let's say, or are accepting of whenever it is shown on camera. I don't have any kind of bias. I know exactly what happened. This is a deck by Doreen Virtue and Radley Valentine. And it has been reprinted by Radley Valentine with only his name on the deck, because Doreen Virtue, at a certain point in her life, after dedicating almost all of her life to tarot and the way in which she was using tarot as a way to healing people, she actually rejected tarot. And because of that, there's been a lot of decks that have been reprinted, you know, taking off her name. This deck is an older deck, as you can tell. It's not, the box is actually not in a good shape. Personally, I don't have any kind of bias. I understand that people can change their mind. I don't necessarily agree, but I believe that at a certain point in my life, I don't have to agree with everyone. We can live in the same world in which there's people with an opinion that is completely the opposite of what ours is. So I'm fine with that. And I'm thinking that, you know, I do enjoy tarot. I do enjoy tarot for healing purposes, for, you know, improving my own life. And if someone doesn't feel the same anymore, then, you know, it's up to them. What I do like is that this tarot deck, and the reason why it's here, because it's a cozy tarot deck for me, is that every single card, and I mean it, every single card in this deck has some kind of a silver lining. So, you know, if I can find the 3 of Swords or the 10 of Swords, I'll obviously show you. But basically, it's, so the Swords is the suit of thought. Basically it's okay. When it comes to the aesthetics of the decks, it's not my vibe at all. Like I'm like, yeah, I mean, no, I don't like it. But the reason why I do believe that it's actually one of those really gentle decks is because of the sentences at the bottom of the cards. And so basically that's what it is. It's the deck of the guardian angel. If you believe in guardian angel, whether you're religious or not, it doesn't make any difference. I do believe that angels actually transcends the concept of religion. Angels are protective entities. You know, those entities that watch over you all the time. And it can be someone, for me, for example, I really strongly believe that this really close friend of mine that passed away is my angel, because she's really looking over me, and she's always told me that she'll always be there for me, and I actually believe it. And so, for example, just to give you one example, to just give you the sense of what I'm talking about when I say that every single card, even the bad ones, have a kind of a silver lining. So this is the 9 of Thought, which is actually the 9 of Swords. And if you know your tarot, you will know that the 9 of Swords is the card of the anxiety. Okay, it's the card of overwhelming, worrying thoughts. Is the card that wakes you up at 3 a.m. because you all of a sudden everything looks really bleak and gloomy and you don't know what to do, and you're convinced all of a sudden that everything is going to go wrong. That's the 9 of Swords. Now this is the 9 of Thought in this deck. So it says, stop being so hard on yourself and turn your thoughts towards the positive. There's no need to worry. Anticipating the worst isn't helpful. Know that heaven will provide a solution. Now that I don't particularly like. I don't believe in heaven per se, but you know, you can always decide to see this word as in a different perspective. You can be referring to heaven as nirvana, for example. If your experience is sleepless nights, yes, or anxiety, yep, over a challenge in your life, release the problem to your angels. That's another thing. You can choose whether to interpret this literally, in the sense that, you know, interpreting heaven as in the religious meaning of heaven, and angels and as in the religious meaning of angels, or you can actually choose to see this in whatever kind of spirituality you rely upon to make your life more meaningful. I'm not a religious person, but I respect religious people. And I also really love interacting with anyone who believes in a religion, because to me it's fascinating. I'm someone who does wake up at 3 a.m. and asking them, what do they do? who do you pray to? You know, how do you react? What are your thoughts? Do you consign yourself? Do you rely on angels to be there for you? And just, do you rely on providence to you know, to save you? That's incredibly interesting and fascinating to me. So you can choose to see this card as, in a way or another. To me, I am a spiritual person, so obviously I will think about, you know, the power of letting go, surrender, for example. There is a concept very famous, very popular in yoga, and so on and so forth. And all of these cards will be with the same kind of tone, you know, the same kind of take on the cards, which is, you know, that's the reason why it makes it a cozy deck for me, because it makes you really go, like a really strong sense of relief. You know, you can take a step back from your worries and have a look at it, and, you know, just choose to relax for once and not necessarily always be on the lookout for something to happen. By the way, apologies about the noise in the background, as always. There's someone doing some renovation works. So this is the reason why this is a cozy deck for me, because it really gives you a silver lining for each and every situation. This is the Guardian Angel Tarot. Okay, so last but not least, I really wanted to include an oracle deck into my cozy decks, and it has to be the Human Spirit Oracle. This, I apologize, I think it's actually very recent, if not, like, it has been released, I believe, on the 3rd of May, at least in Australia. It's a rock pool deck. So rock pool is not being very Australian, in the sense that it tends to release decks in the US first and then in Australia. Fair enough. I understand there is a much bigger market in the US than there is here. But, you know, it is like, for once that we have one publishing company, although Blue Angel is also Australian. But, you know, it will feel like it's a bit of a betrayal that actually sell decks in the US, and then we have to wait. In Australia, we have to wait like 4 or 5 months to get our hands on them. But this one was released on the 3rd of May in Australia. It's called the Human Spirit Oracle, and it's just incredible. It's probably not for everyone, and I'll explain why. Because it's a photographic deck, but it's heavily manipulated, as you can tell. So it starts from a photo, but then obviously there's a lot of photoshopping, let's say, going on. The reason why this deck is a cozy deck for me is because of the sentences and because of the book, the guidebook. So there's, let's say, if I go through the whole deck, there will be probably 70% of the sentences that are here on the side that make sense without going to the guidebook. So if it says, for example, commune with nature, well, it doesn't really take much to understand what it's saying. But something that says, I'm possible, perhaps you do need to read something in the guidebook, manifest your miracle. It can go either way. Count your chickens. I love this card. Count your chickens. It means count your blessings, make a wish, etc. I love the diversity. I think this is one of the very first time in which I see diversity when it comes to ability, also inclusive of Down syndrome. There may have been a couple of other decks that, you know, right now I can't remember. But that is very touching for me. That is really, really moving. There's I love the colors. I really love everything about this deck, and lo and behold, it's a good cardstock. You guys, it's a good cardstock. Yay! Unfortunately, it comes with this glossy, really unpleasant kind of gilding. It's the kind of very sharp gilding that will eventually scratch your fingers, but you know, you can't have everything in life, so I'm happy about the cardstock, and you know, if I have to put up with the gilding, well, so be it. But I feel like Rock Pool has done a lot of, has gone through a lot of improvement, you know, when it comes to the production value of these decks. You guys, I can't tell you how much I love these sentences. It's just not a full sentence, just a couple of words sometimes, but the meanings are exceptional. Exceptional. I really enjoy this deck so very much. It pairs really, really well with the mystical moment, with the dream keepers, with all those similar kind of surreal art kind of decks. You know, for maybe even with the Somnia, I'm thinking. I think I posted a couple of pairings on my Instagram page. I run so I have this Instagram page in which I run a lot of I don't want to call it a quiz in the sense that, but I always put like 9 or 10 pairings for each and every new deck that I get, and I ask people to comment on which one is their favorite ones. And it's gotten to the point of that I have a lot of commenting, and I really love that, because, you know, it's the way in which people interact that really make me happy. The road less traveled. That card is for me. Oh, look at this card, head in the clouds. That is so cool. So this is the Human Spirit Oracle, and it's the last deck for this really super fun tag, which is my cozy decks, and it's a VR to Nightshade Tarot. Thank you so much for staying with me till the end of this video. More to come. Have a great day.